Hey guys, today we have Al from Lumna Acres, and I'm sure a lot of you are really familiar with his channel. He has amazing videos about, my personal favorite ones are the ones about pigs. We have his cooking videos with his little girl, and lately his wife has been coming in a lot more. So I'm really excited to have Al here today. And just so that you kind of know where he's coming from with his channel and also with his family life, we're going to start out with your occupation, how big is your family, how big is your homestead? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right now I do construction. I'm a subcontractor. So it's where my construction background comes in. I grew up, my father did it, and just around the house I grew up watching him, and that's how I learn. I learn by seeing and doing. I'll just pick a project up and I'll try it.
I think that's the first video I saw of you, is you were finishing the inside of your cabin and you're talking about your wood stove, and you had a really cool access point to your chimney on the outside of your house that I thought was brilliant, because we were trying to get up on ladders to clean out just to clean out the chimney so we weren't having chimney fires. And I love those videos. They were awesome.
Thank you.
So I have seen your daughter in quite a few of your videos with the cooking, and lately your wife has come in. Is it easy for you to get your family to come in? And what are your favorite videos to make with your family?
It's easy to get them to come in if they're home when I'm doing it. A lot of times if I'm making a video, they're out or they're working. So if they're home, it's easy to get them. My favorite videos are just if we're doing something. If I can get them to help me out and give me a hand, it's just fun being a family and being able to show that with everybody.
I remember when we had first talked, it's been like, I don't know, 18 months, maybe 2 years since we first talked. And I remember you getting your wife to come in, that it really wasn't her thing. But she's been a rock star lately. When you were doing your outdoor kitchen, trying to get the floor finished.
She was, yep.
She's really rocking it lately and coming in and being a good sport. I love that. So how big is your homestead?
We have 8.5
animals.
We have 8.5 acres here. And I would say right now we're using maybe 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is wooded. We got New York City, which we have our chickens in. We got the pigs. They're in the winter greenhouse right now. We have 2 of them. And then we got meat birds going, and we're starting some Icelandic chicks, and they're out in our chicken tractors on pasture.
So you have a pretty broad. I love to see variety in a homestead. I feel like the more types of animals you have, the healthier your homestead is, because you have different dietary needs for the animals, different things that they put back into the soil with their manure. I love to see a lot of variety in your livestock. So, and the topic that we picked was kind of looking back at your homestead, what succeeded, what failed, what would you do again? Now that you have some distance from when you first started and kind of your dream homestead, do you have anything that really stands out to you that you would say, if I had known this when I started homesteading, I wouldn't have done it, or I would have done it differently?
I'd say my biggest thing is when we started at this property, we had a deadline. Olivia was starting school in 3 months, and we wanted to be living in the house for when school started. So we just bulled and jammed. We got everything done the way we wanted it, but we didn't stop, take pictures or video or anything. So we have nothing to look back
on. I would have to say that some of my most treasured are those first videos that I took on our homestead. And I wish that I had taken more of them. But I agree, being able to see the before and the after and see the progress that you made and have those memories from when your little kids were helping you, because homestead isn't about the egg. It's about the memories you're creating with your family. It's about the experience. The reason you're homesteading is because you want to spend more time with your family, right?
Right, yeah, like me and Olivia, we were the ones here Monday through Friday building the house. I just have what's in my head. I don't have photos. I don't have any videos of me and Olivia. I had her with the nail gun. She was helping me put the boards up and, you know, teaching her all that stuff. I don't have videos or photos on that. And then nights and weekends, the whole family.
Exactly. I think one of the nicest things about being a homesteader and a YouTuber at the same time is that you have this wonderful like scrapbook that you look back on, and the memories that your kids won't have, you can look at it and be like, yeah, you were really there and you really did this, and aren't you amazing? And hold on a second, let me yell at my kids. I told them no pounding. Kaya, remember how I said no pounding? No, but you're still pounding, even if it's not a hammer. Honey, you need to go do it somewhere that I can't hear, like pound on the dirt. Okay. Honey, both of you have to move away, okay? You can't, either one of you can't pound on the deck because thank you. Okay, I don't remember what we were saying.
About the family having YouTube and the memories and.
Oh, yeah. So I think that a lot of times the proof is in the pudding. If you don't document what you're doing, people aren't going to believe you actually did it. Right. They're going to look at it and be like, well, I'm sure there's other people around you who've done similar things, or maybe that's just what everything looks like there, and you just don't know unless you document it.
And then we forget too, if we have short-term memories, like myself, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I did do that, or this is what it looked like before. Like this house was burnt. There was just some remnants standing here and we bought it, so we cleared it. And it's just like, you don't think of it most of the time, and we don't even have many photos to go back and look at. So exactly, it's like a legacy. The farm you're handing off as a legacy, and having recorded it is a legacy to say, this is what works in our area. If you ever want to duplicate this, kids, if you decide not to stay at our homestead, but you're somewhere else, you have these to look back on. Also, cannot use the drill right next to the open window. Okay? She doesn't want to acknowledge that she heard me. Okay, sorry. Tiny houses have so many benefits, but one of them is not small children running back and forth. Okay, so you wish you had documented it the way you started, or the amount of money, or the family situation, how you raised your animals. Was there anything else that you maybe would have changed? No, we came into it, we said we have X amount of money to do, and once we hit that budget, we're stopping. And we went in with that mindset, and we did what we could do. There's still projects here that aren't finished because of that. I wanted animals right away, but I told myself, no, while we're building the house, you're not going to have time for the animals. So we put getting the animals off for a year, which I'm glad we did.
I think that's incredibly wise. I know for me, the urgency that I felt, I think sometimes prepper homesteader kind of goes hand in hand. And I know that when we bought our property, we had been listening to Glenn Beck a lot, and we were freaking out. We're like, the world's going to end, the dollar's going to drop. We need to spend every last penny we have to make ourselves as shored up and self-reliant as we can be, and we have to do it now. And even though we did it with cash, I feel like we went into things, and I don't think starting a homestead is about panic. I think if you don't have your outbuildings together, if you for instance with you, if you didn't have your house put together, your wife would have been really stressed out, your family would have been stressed out, you would have been stressed out, and your money would have been stretched too thin. So I do think there's, in order to do these things, have the nice house, everything should be working, you should be finished. And then you can move on to outbuildings. And once you have your outbuildings built, and then you work on fencing. And then once you have fencing finished, then you get your animals. Otherwise, what happened with us, where we had, like, one of the reasons I love your pig videos is that we did have pigs escape one year. And it was because we had raised pigs for years, but this time I didn't do things in the right order. I was just panicky to have the pigs there and get them started and get them raised. And I didn't do it in the right order. And it ended up costing us money. It ended up costing us heartache, and it strained relationships with neighbors, because I had pigs that got into the neighbor's property, and I was also raising a pig for a friend at the time, and I ended up having to reimburse her. It was a nightmare, and it turns you off of homesteading if you don't do it in the right order.
I was just going to say, homesteading, there is a lot of work to it, especially getting set up. So you don't want to burn yourself out, or it is work, but if we want it to be like for me, it's a passion. So I don't want to burn myself out, and then I won't love it anymore. And I don't want my wife and my daughter to get burnt out or look at it as, oh, this is drudgery work. No, this is supposed to be fun. This is a passion. We want to raise this food this way so we can heal our bodies and for other people, but we got to take our time and enjoy it.
I think that's so true.
It's a daily reminder, even for myself. Because a lot of
because sometimes it gets exciting. You can have these great successes, and you're like, okay, on to the next project. Let's get started. And you jump into it too fast, and you're like, whoa. really paid that price. Maybe I didn't do enough research. So yeah, I think caution is a great way to give longevity to your homestead.
Like we want to get goats for milking and dairy goats. Yeah. We're like, no, we need to wait. We're maxed out. We have a lot of projects we're doing, and goats 1 to 2 times a day. You got to be out there milking them. So it's a big commitment. So we're like, no, when somebody's home full time, then we can get goats. And it's hard. We want the goats.
Again, you're much wiser than me. For me, animals are my passion. I love the more animals, the merrier. I love having too many. I almost always jump in with my feet without having used my brain first. I love having milk animals. They of all the animals I have, they are the ones that pay back the best. They feed your pigs, they feed your chickens, they feed your family. You can sell it if you have extra. We've ever spent on goats has always come back fourfold. But it is time consuming and things where, you know, I do think that it is really nice, even if you don't have milk animals, to have somebody who's home full time, because there can be emergencies on the farm that if both people are at work, save an animal if you're not there to do it. It's, you know, it's not a necessity, but it is nice to have somebody who's home full time, and especially with the milk goat, it's nice. With milk animals, the way that we are doing it right now, I think is the ultimate way, is that we kind of share our goats. We have renters, and then we have our little cabin on the back of our property. And I milk in the morning and she milks at night. And I provide the pasture and I take care of the pasture, and she pays for hay in the winter. And so, and she also pays for the grain. And so goats, I don't have to buy the feed. I just have to go and play in the water to get my pastures watered. I need to be out of town for a couple days on business. She just milks in the mornings as well, and she has extra milk. We're only milking 3 goats, and we have more milk. We're making cheese as fast as we can. We're making a gallon of yogurt a day, just my family, not even her family. Gallon of yogurt a day, plus all the milk we can drink. We wish we had a pig right now. To do that kind of animal sharing project, like if you have like-minded neighbors, and you know, we have about 3 gallons of milk a day is what comes into us from 3 goats. And
breed of goats again.
What's that?
What are the breeds of goats?
Ours are Alpine, and we only have goats from one particular herd. We had a really hard time finding really good goats around here. Their milk tasted awful, or they had diseases or medical. Yeah, we just had some really nightmares. And so we now breed only within our own herd, and those that we've sold goats to from our herd, they're full, they're big, they're Alpines, and they are registered stock. We were really careful this time when we got our what do you call it, our beginning stock. So,
and that's another thing, because I really wasn't even thinking of that, is you got the milk and you got to do every day. But then once you have all that milk, if you have a huge excess, you got to have time to do something with it. Otherwise, it just becomes a huge waste.
Or have pigs. Pigs make it so easy, because you just go out and give it to the pigs, and then it just turns into bacon, milk flavored bacon. It's fantastic. The renters are taking a lot of the clabbered milks. So once we make yogurt and we have whey, it still has a lot of protein in it. They're using it to soak the grain for their chickens, and then the chickens eat it. When we have when we have meat birds, we feed them a lot of the curdled milk, and it's high protein. So we don't have to buy retail raw grains, you know, in the whey. And it does really well for them, especially when they're free range. It's wise to take your time on that kind of thing. I never take that advice. I never ever do. I'm always slightly panicky about food, and it's
hard to do.
Yeah.
Take the time and go slow, but if not, you're just gonna get yourself worked up, or you're gonna get sick because you're stressed. Your animals are gonna get sick because they're stressed. And
yep. And it causes strains in your relationship. Like, John is not a homesteader. He's very patient with me and my addiction. And he's always been very patient with me, but there have been times where he's like, why are we doing this? And it was why we started the YouTube channel, was because I was like, can I pay for my addiction with YouTube? Because it was previously coming out of his budget. And So I think it's really nice when you can make money off your homestead to pay for your homestead. I think that's the best way to do it. Necessarily had to be YouTube. I was selling wool goods. I would follow the tree cutting services, and I would follow them and pick up firewood, and then I would sell it to people or trade it to them for hay. I sell baby goats in the spring, and that pays for hay for the rest of the year. That's how the renters are paying for hay, is that they, when we had bottle babies from our goats, is that the deal was is that they would raise the bottle babies, sell the bottle babies, and then that would be the money they would, and they did. And so I think there's all sorts of ways to make money on the homestead, so that things like feed are, and a lot of times what we'll do is we'll raise a pig in exchange for somebody else will buy the pigs. I will feed the pigs off my property and with the goat's milk and everything, and then they get a pig at the end of the year, and I didn't have to pay for my pig.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to work that kind of thing out.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's see. And how many years have you been homesteading? Did you already tell me?
Nope. We on this property or in general?
General.
Been since 2007.
So a while.
It's been a while. Yep. That's the hard things. We've moved
Okay.
to our third property, so that's hard. We've gotten ourselves
Every time you start over. Oh.
somewhere else, and you start over. It's like, oh, I had this. I had that going. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I think you're smarter starting over the next time, but I don't think you have your youth behind you so much. After you start that first homestead, I think you kill yourself on your first homestead with all the work you put into it, and that every time you have to start over. So I would say find your original homestead and stay there and learn there and just don't leave, because oh my gosh, starting over every time.
So when we started small at the first property. So we didn't really burn ourselves up setting that one out, which was nice. In Mass, it was a smaller place with level land. So we just had gardens and we had chickens and rabbits. So that was small. But now we're at a bigger property that's wooded. So now we're really having to put a lot of effort in. After doing this place, I don't think I'd want to do it all over again, having to go this big. Right. It was nice starting small. So if you're in these suburbs somewhere, if you're in an apartment, start small and learn where you're at, and then just keep growing it from there. That's kind of how we've done it.
I agree.
I want to start big and then do it again.
It saps you not only of kind of your youth and your vitality, but it kind of saps you of your dream. If you have to take that dream and leave it, kind of does something to you emotionally. I think you're very invested in your soil at that point. It's like you're leaving a child. We did start in the city in just a tiny little 1/10 of an acre plot, and we had I loved that place, and I actually go back and drive past it frequently because my heart is still there. We put definitely a lot more work in here, and it's probably one of the reasons we're renting instead of selling, is that I have a very hard time letting go of it and what we've done here. So a word to the wise is, you do it, start slow enough that you don't burn yourself out. We started it, we were so excited about it, and we didn't put a lot of money into it initially, but it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to hand out. And we did. I was the stay-at-home mom, and I think I would have preferred to have spent more time with my kids and just grown a garden than trying to figure out how to make the whole 1.5 acres usable, which it doesn't sound like a lot of space, but it can be a lot of space if you're doing it to really feed your family. And so I think how you guys started, where you just start out with a few chickens and you start out with a garden, learn how to garden, learn where you want your garden, starting slow and easy, saves you a lot of money, but it also kind of helps you kind of hone your dream a little bit, so that one thing that Paul Wheaton says that I really love is, he says, watch your property the first year.
Oh yeah.
Don't do anything with it. Watch where your water flows. Watch when the frost comes, soil is rather than your bad soil. Did you guys find the same thing?
Yeah, we kept an eye on all that stuff. It's hard, if you're, like you said, especially like if you're a prepper mindset, if you just like to get stuff done, it's hard to slow down and and to do that and tell yourself, oh, it's okay, we're not doing anything this year. You are, yeah,
You're watching.
You're watching. You want to know, okay, if I plant here, if I plant there, or okay, oh, I planted there, but that's where I really want to put a barn. Or that's, you want to figure out the layout of the land and what's going to work best. We had one area we cleared that I was going to put a barn there, and I'm glad I didn't. It's the best soil on our property.
So my next two questions are why homesteading and what is homesteading to you? And so do you want to maybe pull those two questions together a little bit?
So what got us into homesteading is I always had anxiety growing up, and looking back now and learning, it was from our food. So I grew up in the 80s. Everything was, macaroni and cheese, Twinkies. You had Little Debbie cakes. You had TV dinners. We didn't eat that all the time, but we ate it a good amount. We always had processed food. McDonald's was a treat. Candy's a treat. So I always had anxiety really bad. When I moved up here to northern New Hampshire by myself in 2001, I had it, but I was controllable. And then I quit smoking after I got married. And that's how I chilled out. That's like what calmed me, was smoking. When I quit smoking, I was a nut. When I was in high school, I had already taken antidepressants, and I knew I didn't like them. So when I quit smoking, I was talking to a psychiatrist, like, you got to take an antidepressant to calm your nerves. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. He goes, well, the only other thing I can tell you is to start smoking again. You're a wreck. I'm like, sorry. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Advice is like, either take medicine or start smoking again. I was like, no, I told myself I was going to quit. So I'm quitting, and I'm not going back on prescription drugs, because when I tried it, I was a zombie. I mean, that's just another story. So then I started finding like alternative medicine doctors, and we just started learning about food and reading about it. And then around that time, Food Inc. came out. So we started diving more into it. And then that's when it just all started. We started having a garden. We started having chickens. And little by little, I went, oh, I am feeling better. Oh, this does make a difference. So homesteading to us is for the food and the quality of life. Because you can't buy even from your local, some of your local farmers you can buy good food from. Like, we have a guy up here who pasture raises pigs. That's his big thing. But they're not non-GMO, and they're not organic fed. So I don't know. You don't know why they're doing it, or, I mean, I understand organic and non-GMO isn't easy to get up here, but they market that stuff like it's the best. But is it? And if you raise it yourself, you know what you're getting.
That story sounds so much like what we have done in our family. For me, it was always about the food. I had major food allergies as a kid.
Yep.
And the only way that my parents could afford to feed me was to raise it ourselves. And so I was raised on a 12-acre farm with cows and goats and geese and everything. I did okay. So I left home and went to college and things like that, but I still had food coming from home. Like, I would go home and get gallons of raw milk and bring it back to my dorm, and I would get potatoes from my parents' root cellar and bring them to college. And when we got pregnant with Paige was when I'm like, oh, something's got to change. I'm not growing it myself. I'm not feeling like I'm getting outdoors enough. And I started to have some depression. And I found that the more time that I spent outside, depression I had, the more worthwhile I felt as an individual, the more I could look at something that I had created and say, I finished this today. This is what my day thing. I created this. And it's for my family. I didn't go sit at a job and work without really interacting with people and not having any sunshine. And so I found that as long as I could do most of my work outdoors, the more happy and life felt. And on top of that, I had animal when we got married with chickens, and all the food scraps that we have went to the chickens, because I was looking at all these food scraps going in the garbage. I'm like, this is crazy. We used to feed this to chickens. Why don't we just get chickens and feed the food scraps to them? And the only reason we moved to our big property, because we could raise a ton of food. I had an amazing garden in our little place. I don't have an amazing garden here because all I'm working on is pastures all the time. But it felt so much like our family life. was so sterile when we weren't spending enough time outside, when we didn't have the farm, when we didn't have the animals. And the most exciting thing that we had on the homestead when we were homesteading was to sit down at the dinner table and count all the things that we had created. And we had so many meals where everything on the table was something that had come from our property, our tiny little piece of heaven.
Do you remember the first time you sat down and had a meal that was almost completely grown from your homestead?
It was also the meal that came out of our wood burning stove. When we first got the wood burning stove, that was the cook stove. Pork, or if it was duck, but it was one of those things, and we cooked it in the wood stove in our kitchen, and we had our goat's milk, and now the renters are using the greenhouse, but the years that we had the greenhouse, like, this is wealth. That's what wealth looks like, is to have this groaning table of food. To go out and do it all again tomorrow, it felt like wealth.
Satisfying, I think, when you first sit down and you eat the first meal that you've grown from your property. It's like, I can feel good about this. I know where all this food came from. I know the quality that's behind it. It's just that much more meaningful, I think. And you respect it more because you know what went into it.
And I think if you have children on your homestead, that is one of the biggest gifts it gives them, is that they had a relationship with the production of the food. And I see all of your cooking videos with your daughter, and I think she has a relationship with this food. She has a relationship with her dad with this food. And on top of that, she had a relationship with the food before she cooked it. She collected the eggs. You know, you have this feeling of peace to know that you can duplicate it. Someone else delivering this food and you're dependent on them. It's that you have, I don't know, you're part of your environment instead of being disconnected from it.
You don't know what it takes. And I think one of the big things is that, like, growing your own food and living on a homestead, it teaches you delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go to the restaurant, you say, I want that meal. And it's on your plate. So you can, like a computer, I want that. You touch it, you order it, 2 days, Amazon's got it to your house. Real life doesn't work that way. Whether it's a career, it's an education. So I think homesteading, farming teaches you delayed gratification, and it's good for kids to learn that.
Yeah, and I think it also shows you empowerment. That, I mean, you think about like Joel Salatin and his son, I think his name is Daniel.
Yes.
Job, wanted money, and so he helped his son get some seed money together to buy some rabbits. And now they're meat rabbits. Now that he's an adult, he raised these meat rabbits for all these years, and he did the marketing, and he did the feeding, and he did this by being a farmer next to his father. And now rabbits are a big part of their business.
Yeah.
I think it so empowers kids to look around and say, what are my raw materials? What can I use here to create what it is that I want out of life?
And I can do this. I can create it. This doesn't take somebody else, because that's another thing. Everybody thinks that you got to be a specialist to do something, and you don't need to be. You might stink it at the first time, but that's all right. You'll do better next time. So it teaches a kid that if I want something, if I need this, I can go out and make it. I don't need to rely on somebody else or call the plumber or call an electrician and pay huge money to this person. I can figure it out and do it myself.
I think so. And I think it also helps you to value what it is you've created more. Instead of it being a disposable lifestyle, it becomes, I made this, I'm going to cherish it, I'm going to take care of it, and I really feel like homesteading is not a religion, and not a philosophy, but it is circuitous in the way that everything feeds back on itself.
Yeah, and you learn how interconnected everything is. Like you were just saying, your goats, you love them for the milk and they can feed a pig. Well, you got the grass that's collecting the solar power, growing for free. You get to turn that into goat meat, goat milk, and then that milk you can take and you can turn it into pigs. You can turn it into, chickens, eggs. So it's just a huge continuous cycle. And you got the compost, the manure, you turn it into compost, and then you're growing more free food with it. So it's just, everything's interconnected, and you see that all hands-on.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think that the internet as it is now, allows people to access other people's information. You know, if there's something you can't figure out on your homestead, there's somebody else out there who has figured it out, and just go find it somewhere. And
but that being said, if somebody, because I think a lot of people think this, like, oh, so and so does it this way, this is the only way.
Right.
And it might work for you, but you might have to tweak it. Just because you can garden one way or your goats one way for you, it might not work for me. But don't feel bad about it. Just keep practicing, experiment.
Well, and location. Danny and Wanda from Deep South Homestead, we went and saw them, and season is the winter, early spring, and maybe the late fall thing. They won't grow. And us talking about how we can't really plant things until June, and we're finished by the end of September, they look at us and we're like, are you kidding me? And so location, you know, just because somebody, you have to be careful about your internet resource that you pick. The reason that I love having a boneyard and having all of this free stuff that I collect is that I can try other people's ideas without actually spending money. I do spend money, but I wait until I built some prototypes first. I always build my prototypes out of free, and then I build another prototype that was cheap, and then I go and I build the one that's really going to work, and I spend my money and I do it right. Information is about as worth as much as you paid for it, and you do have to be cautious not to take.
Right.
It can only be done one way, for sure. So dream life for your family, and how do you plan to achieve it?
The dream life for our family is going to be everybody, or me and my wife, being on the homestead full time and being here teaching other people. And how we're going to achieve it, I think it's just going to take time, and we got to be determined that we're going to get there someday, and just keep dreaming about it and working at it. It's not going to happen overnight, just like building your homestead isn't going to happen overnight. I think that's the big one, and that's kind of another daily reminder.
Is there any philosophy or anything that you follow that you feel will get you there?
Off the top of my head, no, unfortunately.
A lot of people that get in the homestead are thinking, I want to be debt-free, I want to have my house paid off, and until I have that done, nothing else is important. And so I know that some people have the philosophy, never go into debt, get the debt paid off as fast as you can. We're not going to do any fun family things until this debt is paid off. And then others say, well, you know, I think it's okay to make some investments and to make it happen a little bit faster, and we're still going to go do fun things with the family. Homestead isn't the end all be all. And it seems like those two kind of separate out.
I guess we've already gotten to the debt-free part. So now we're taking our resources and we're putting them into our homestead, and we're not relying on the homestead making money right now. Our homestead is our investment, is the way we look at that. So we still do fun stuff because you still want to have fun. This isn't drudgery for anybody. We want to make sure we're having fun doing it, and just, it's an investment. Just look at it as a long-term goal, and you're going to get there. You know, I think some people probably want to make money right away from it, but I don't look at it that way. The way I look at it is, even if I don't ever get to make money with it, we're building our soil and we're building a lot of our own stuff to raise our own food. So it'll pay off, at least for us personally, in the long run, especially when we get older. We can't do as much physical labor. We'll have done it when we're younger.
I like that. I see a lot of people who would now be considered successes at the independent lifestyle, where they're sharing a lot of information. I think of Sepp Holzer. He is in Austria, and he was called the rebel farmer because he went out on his mountain and he did things differently, knowing that they would work because he'd observed nature farm, and he inherited it. So he already had lived there long enough to have seen what it needed to be. He built his farm, he made his farm profitable, and then he started writing books about it, and then he started to have tours where people could come, and then he started to go tours to other people's places. And so as he aged, he didn't necessarily have to be out working on the farm as hard, but he was sharing this huge information that he had. And I've seen so many other people do that. You have Curtis Stone, who is the urban farmer. You have John Martin Fortier, who is the market gardener, and you have who have done that. where they put in the hard work initially, and then a lot of what they were actually able to create independence for their family with was information, being able to kind of bypass some of the mistakes. I think you get that by working slowly. I don't see that any of these, yeah.
There's a huge generational gap. We've lost a lot of stuff, so we're trying to relearn it. And it takes time. I mean, all that knowledge that they had before, I mean, that took hundreds of years, I'm sure, to get. And now we're trying to reclaim that. And yeah, we just got to forge ahead a little bit at a time and share the information that we get and just do it slowly so you don't burn yourself out.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So let me look one more time.
So what's your dream homestead?
My dream homestead? I love where I am. The only thing was I had too big of a piece. Again, I know an acre and a half sounds like it's just not that much, but it is actually really nice right now to have somebody in my big, huge house. I don't have to, and she helps me with chores. And so for me, I'm not really big into like the intentional community type thing. I don't think it generally works, but I see that smaller my space is, the more intensively I can make it beautiful, the happier my family is, because with an acre and a half, I was really overextended to take care of.
Yeah, it can be a lot of work, but you don't want to take away time from your family and disrupt that. You got to find your balance. So I think the size of your homestead, and it all depends on what you need and what fits your family and your lifestyle.
Right now we're on about a 1/4 acre, I think, is what we shaved off a little 1/4 acre part of our acre and a half parcel, and I'm still here and able to do what needs to be done, but there's no like my responsibility anymore.
If you have a nice piece of property, it doesn't need to be that big to grow a lot of your own food. If it's set up and designed properly.
Yeah, if you have it designed, if you're in the right part of the country where what it is you need to do can happen there, I think is a great thing to look into before you purchase your property. And if you have friends in the area that you can go ask them how many hours a week it takes them to do upkeep on their property and that kind of thing. I think a homestead can be a divisive. Your family isn't in it together, or it's too big of a. It's good to remember it's the family that matters, not necessarily the homestead project. So I know that you have some really big projects that are coming up. I've seen the outdoor kitchen, and it looks like it's going to be amazing. Are wonderful. Doug and Stacy is doing one right now, because I know there's other people off the top of my head. Do you remember?
I know after with Doug and Stacy, they did one last year. I don't know who else is.
Was it Rain Country? I think Rain Country was talking about it too.
Yeah.
And then you're doing it.
Gina's had this, and we've had this in mind for years, ever since we bought the property. We were like, nope, one of us things, we got to take our time. We got to do it when we can do it. So we have. So last year, we were able to go around and we got some trusses. One of her uncle's brothers works at a dump, and somebody was throwing away trusses. We collected trusses last year for it. We have an old antique wood cook stove that we collected. So we're kind of just been building up. It's like, all right, we got some rough sawn 6x6 posts this year. So like, all right, we got a lot of the stuff. We're just gonna need to get gravel and some concrete. Let's do it this year. And now we're
like, it's gonna be beautiful. I am inspired.
Thank you. It's gonna be kind of an outdoor kitchen area / butcher harvesting shop. I want to have like a cold smoker out there. And Hewn Farm is going to be coming here in October. We're going to be doing a 3-day butchering class, and the 3rd day is going to be a charcuterie class, which I really want to learn to do our own hams and bacon. And so the big goal is to have that done, and we can do the class out there and use it.
Going to have anybody from your audience come and help with that, or is it just going to be your 2 channels?
Nope, it's going to be whoever. There's 12 other people that can come, so there will be tickets that are sold for the event if people want to come and join us.
Cool. We went and did that with Farmstead Meatsmith.
Okay.
About 3 years ago, and it was amazing. All the things that you think about meat safety are just like, nope, that's not really how it works. This is how it works. And
I think a lot of that is due to the way you raise the animal. Like if it's confinement farmed and only fed grain, their fat is bad for you. You can go rancid. But if it's pasture raised meat with pasture raised fat, it preserves itself almost.
The thing we came away from it was salt and dry air, which you think about all the food safety things they tell you. Smokehouse where we just used a little like hibachi type grill to smoke with underneath ducks, and we did pork at the same time, and we had hams and we had ducks and we smoked them all. And as long as you do it at the right time of year, you have enough salt and you don't have too much humidity in your air, which is crazy because you know you have to freeze pork, and you know you have to keep it really, really cold, and you know all these things are going to kill you, and they were delicious. They were so good.
They say a lot of it you can do right in your house and just hang it in a cool, dry area.
Yep.
Just salt, because it's getting the moisture out of the meat so it can't rot and go rancid on you.
Our biggest surprise was the charcuterie itself, the prosciutto. When we had the ham, we had salted it and we'd smoked it in the smokehouse, and it was cool smoke. Terrified to eat it raw. Like I cut the bacon up and I cooked it as like that, and it was good for seasoning, but I was terrified to eat it raw, the actual ham. Right. And it took some kid who came over to help us with some goats or something. He came over and was like, "Hey, is that a cured ham?" Yeah. It's just sitting there because we're terrified to eat it. We think we're going to die. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, let's just get it down and cut." And so he carved it up, and the smell of the inside of that ham is like a really mild but really beautiful mushroomy cheese. I think so good in my life. It was nothing like any kind of ham you've ever, and it wasn't slimy, it wasn't moist. It was dry, and it smelled so good, and it tasted so good.
Did it taste like regular ham, or did it have a different taste to it?
It tasted like, you know how packaged ham tastes like salty and like the smoke is overpowering, like you can't taste the meat. Really, really, it just tasted like meat. It tasted like the umami that they talk about, the umami taste that you have in good food that has good meat in it.
Yep.
Of umami, instead of the MSG is the chemical form of umami. It just, it didn't taste like smoke. It didn't taste like salt. It tasted like this amazing flavor of its own. If you haven't read, I think it's called The Third Plate or The Third Dish, The Third Plate of the Third Dish. They talk about that, about how the pig was raised, or whatever animal you raised, how the way that it raised is what actually flavors the meat. It's an amazing book, and it talks about that with goose pate, that they didn't season this pate that was canned up, and it sold for like $800 for one tiny little ounce. Yep. 3 ounces of this pate. They didn't even add salt to it, but the way that they were raised on these chestnuts in Spain, I think, was such that the liver like goose, and it didn't have anything else in it, and it sold for like $800 for this teeny tiny little can because it was so amazing.
I'm hoping and kind of scared at the same time that this might be a game changer. We might have to start raising more pigs because they'll be enjoying the meat so much.
I think, but the thing we found is that we actually ate less meat. You know, a lot of times when you get meat from the grocery store, you can eat this roast for dinner, and you're just like really nice and hungry in the morning. We found that we couldn't eat one of our whole chickens. We could eat what are they called? A banty. If we butchered a banty hen, it would be exactly the right size for our family. And we're big meat eaters, but we couldn't eat any more than that. We can eat half a duck if we eat a duck. We can, but the lamb chops would be the exception to that. My kids can clean up a lot of lamb chops, but we ate less.
We get 3 or 4 meals out of our chicken, and then we make bone broth with it. So then you got soup you can make with that, or stew. So one chicken will go quite a distance for our family, and we're big meat eaters. But
I think something changes about the way that you eat. and about how fresh your food is. And when your body says, this is all I needed, I've had enough, I'm good till breakfast, I'm okay.
Well, I think some of it too is your body's getting good nourishing food and not just empty food. So you don't need as much to get what you need. Even though you're working harder and using more calories, you still don't need as much because it's higher quality food that you're eating.
I think so. I think that's 100% it. And one thing I have found that has been kind of a sideline to that is my kids' fascination with food. They have seen a chicken taken apart, the spinach grow, and they know how to harvest it. They know how to water it. And now, probably since they have been wanting to be involved in the cooking part of it, like Paige can fillet a fish. She likes to cook fish. She's fascinated by fishing now because she's cooked fish. I'm so happy about that. I think to be so young and not to have been, we had somebody that said the other day that I shouldn't be allowing my kids to whittle, that they are fascinated by making weapons, and so they like to whittle. And we've had people tell us that we shouldn't be allowing the kids to be around the animals, or we shouldn't let them help with the harvesting of the animals. And I am so to the anxiety, the depression, like the self-cutting, all the crazy things going on with teenagers is because disconnected from their world. They don't feel empowered. They don't know how to change what's happening around them. They don't realize their seasonality. Okay, so it's hot right now. Well, months it'll be cold, and there'll be things to do in the cold. There's always an endless supply of things to be fascinated by life and fascinated by how things work. And I have no fear for them in the despondency that so many teenagers now feel, because this endless world around them, because they've learned that there are basic ingredients to everything.
Well, you've empowered
you to do anything.
You empowered them, and you've given them the knowledge, and we've given them the knowledge to know, okay, I can figure this out on my own, or I can make this, I can survive. I'm not relying on somebody else, or I don't need to make huge money, or it's not all about the money to go do this. I can do it myself.
Yeah, and I think age is not the qualifier there. I don't think you had I didn't give my kids knives to whittle with until I saw that they could use a kitchen knife safely, or that they weren't going to be safe. They still aren't allowed to handle even BB guns without an adult around, type of a thing. There is a qualifier where they have to prove that they have to be able to handle tools. But I think the sooner we can get tools into our kids' hands, figure things out for themselves.
Definitely.
It makes their brain kick into gear and realize that their brain belongs to them, and mom doesn't have to find them something to entertain them. They better go entertain themselves if they don't want mom to find them something less pleasant.
Yep. We did a video the other day on putting the pigs on pasture and training the pigs to electric fence, and somebody commented, oh, we don't use electric fence wherever because of kids around. What about the kids getting into the electric fence? They'll learn to respect it.
They touch it once.
Right. I think kids need to learn respect. So if they touch a fence and that's where they learn respect, then okay, that's a good thing. They need to know this is off limits. There's a reason why we tell you not to do this and to do that. There's consequences. You touch an electric fence, there's a consequence. You're going to feel it, and you're going to go, oh, yes, there is consequences out there. And it's not going to kill you. It's going to hurt.
Well, and I think if children aren't allowed to have natural consequences, if instead it's always you holding them back and just explaining things to them, then they don't learn to listen to what people are saying to them, for one thing, because mom and dad will always come in and save them, but that they don't learn caution, their own personal caution. For us, it was when Paige was little, we had like little radiant heaters that would get hot on the front. And the first time she tried to touch them, we just kind of stayed back so that she didn't like really touch it, but that we would allow her to touch it.
Yep.
I want there to be an instance where she touched it herself. And we did the same thing with the wood stove. It was a matter of when we knew the fire wasn't hot, it was just warm, and warm enough that it would sting a little bit if she touched the stove. And we kept her away from the part of the stove that would really burn her, but we allowed her to touch the stove so that she could understand for herself and have doesn't understand. They understand pain and don't touch that, but they don't understand mom saying, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. Every time you get close to the stove, they don't understand that.
Well, they're always looking out for mom to tell me, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know I couldn't do that. Mom didn't tell me I couldn't do that. You know,
right.
We got to learn to think for ourselves. And kids and people nowadays don't think for themselves, which is frustrating when you're on the other side and you're dealing with somebody who can't think for themselves.
Yeah, and I think you learn that best in your home setting. It's not something they can teach you in school because there's not a big enough scope at school for there to be consequences. And so I do feel like, even if you're not homesteading, if you're taking your kids camping, if you're doing scouting, if you're doing all these things where it's family time, where you can be teaching and involved with your children, that's really all about.
That's the word right there, is involving your kids. That's all you need to do. And whatever you're doing, it doesn't involve them in cooking, involve them in working on your car on the weekends, just involve them in sewing. Whatever you do, involve your kids, and they can learn.
Well, and you were talking earlier that your livelihood is based on the fact that your dad taught you, and it was you observing your dad, and now your livelihood is this amazing skill that not only makes you a living, but also builds your homestead. And it's because you watched your dad.
Yeah, that's how I learn. I can't pick up a book and read. I could pick up a book, read it, and I'm lost. But if I watch somebody doing something, then I can figure it out later on. So to me, it's a big thing. Let your kids watch them bigger. Let them do it.
Yeah.
It might take you to get it done. Letting them, you might have to fix it. But they're not going to learn any other way.
Well, and I think it does come down to, there's a lot of people out there that feel like they don't know what to do with their children. When their kids are out of school, it's a horrible time because they have to entertain them. And I think sometimes on our homesteads, we are the same way, where we're like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I'm never going to get it all done. And the other day, I do this periodically. I'll turn around and look around and I'll be like, I've got two little people here who keep telling me that they're bored.
Right.
They eat my food and I have a safe bed for them. It would be really great if I would give myself a break and say, you know what, they need these skills, but more than anything, I need their help. They are so valuable to me. These kids are such a huge help. Let's make sure that we're letting them mature to the next level rather than keeping a 6-year-old at a 4-year-old level. Let's let her push a little and let's see if we can get her to 7-year-old level before she turns 7. And let's keep introducing them to these new things that might be a little scary at first. Let's have Paige do all the cooking. Let's have Kaya haul all the water. Let's have Paige do 1 goat milk. You know, she can milk 1 goat. We can do this. I think it makes our kids feel powerful. I think it makes them feel like they are a valuable part of the family, that their opinion also matters about what's happening on the homestead because they're participating in it. Of course, their opinion matters.
I know we were made to cook 1 night a week as kids. I think I started around 12. And yeah, for me, for cooking, when I moved out on my own, it was, okay, I go to the grocery store, buy what I need. I can cook whatever I want. And that's how I learned. So if it wasn't for, a lot of people don't know how to cook, or they're afraid to cook. So
and I think it shows up in your grocery bill. Not only do you not know where your food comes from, but you don't know what to do with it when you have it, because all you know how to use is a microwave, and it affects your health, and it really affects your budget because it's expensive to buy that way. But then also doctor's bills are a little pricey too.
There you go.
No.
Okay.
Hey guys, so we have a bunch of sickos, and I am not finished with all the projects. I want to show you what an Instant Pot does with yogurt. I'll put the link in the description below because I already have the discount code for it. I just haven't tested it to see if it works. So if you guys already know you want an Instant Pot, links below. I'm also working on the duck house, which we haven't finished painting. I'm also working on the bench, which I haven't got a cushion for yet. So I have all these multiple projects that are just kind of going nowhere right now because everybody's sick and we have cold weather. Love Oklahoma. I thought that Idaho was bipolar. Oklahoma has it in spades. Really cold, nice and warm. Really cold, nice and warm. Beautiful place. Anyway, back to everything. Okay. So today, this is an interview between me and Al Lumna from Lumna Acres. They are a beautiful, fantastic channel that is really just, they're living the life. They have arrived. When we first started talking, he was just starting his homestead, and now he has his summer kitchen. He has his meat pigs that he has just butchered in his summer kitchen. They're making sausage from their own pigs. They're doing meat birds, egg-laying birds. They have chick saws and New York City they're doing amazing things. And so I really want you to go see what a successful homestead looks like. And we had a discussion where we talked about what it was like going from beginning to where he is now, why he did things the way he did. And he was a perfectionist. He waited to do them until he had the money for them and the materials, and that's when he did them. He didn't do it on a dime the way a lot of people do, which is the way that I did it. I always did it with repurposed materials and pallets, because that was, I felt like it was more important to be feeding my family in the now rather than wait until I had the money to build them. And he did it the other way around, and now you can see how beautiful it is and his take on it. So make sure to go check out his channel. He is doing a chicken plucker, a professional big beautiful chicken plucker, as a giveaway when they hit 20,000 subscribers. So go and take part in that, and hopefully you so hopefully you enjoy the video.